All right. So, who here believes in emotional distress? I'd just like you to pause and think about that for a moment. Now, when a person inflicts so much emotional turmoil in another's life that it diminishes the quality of life, literally and figuratively, isn't that a crime? Doesn't that sound like a crime? It is a crime. In fact, personal injury attorneys litigate these cases all the time, and it's called pain and suffering, which is one of the many reasons why I believe that adultery and infidelity are not only just crimes, but that they should be punishable by law and carry steep fines. Now, people would probably think that, and I would completely understand why you say, well, it's not really a crime. It's a not nice thing to do, but I wouldn't call it a crime. And I totally respect where you would be coming from with that thought process. But we're going to delve into why it actually is a crime and why it's something that shouldn't be gaffed off as just a personal choice. Did you know that according to Infidelity Recovery Institute that there are still infidelity laws in place for 17 out of the 50 states? I know, big deal. By the end of this speech, I want you to have a better understanding about the fact that infidelity is not just something that's immoral, but that it does cause some long term effects physically and psychologically, and that, it causes a lot of irreversible damages to a lot of people. And let's not forget the threat of physical harm for the person who offends, or maybe for the person who, has experienced the betrayal. Um, and then, of course, the last thing that I want you to take away from this is that in many other circumstances, people are punished for committing acts that harm people as much as infidelity or the betrayal of infidelity. But before we get all into that, let's unpack this by defining what adultery is, and we'll go from there. So, what is adultery? Well, according to the dictionary, it is defined as a voluntary, it's not an accident, a voluntary sexual intercourse between a married person and someone who is not their spouse. I know, but we have to get that out of there. Now, Guitar categorizes it in two categories, emotional and sexual. But for the sake of this, we're going to focus more on the sexual aspects of it. Now, why should it be a crime? Because we're talking about it's a crime, right? Well, let's talk about the fact that it creates emotional distress. People get sick behind this, they lose their hair, they're really stressed out. That's no way to live with all of that on you. Now, it also causes some long-term pain and suffering that is similar to post-traumatic stress disorder, according to Thason. People tend to relive this with intrusive thoughts, and they can't function. Now, it's okay to say that, a terrible thing has happened to a person who's been in war, but people don't give that same respect to a person who's been betrayed by the person that they vowed to love and honor and cherish for the rest of their lives. So, PTSD, it's a very real thing. It happens. It also triggers homicidal tendencies. Yeah, people kind of don't like to be cheated on. They kill for it. And I'm putting a friendly light on it, but truth of the matter is sometimes people who are betrayed in that way, they don't know what to do. They either harm themselves, or they harm the other person, or they kill everyone themselves, like murder, suicide. It happens. Now, there's also the physical risk. We don't really hear a lot of people talking about that, but when a person is unfaithful, they're putting the betrayed at risk for all kinds of untreatable diseases, to include HIV and AIDS. That's a very real possibility that could happen when a person is unfaithful, because typically in most monogamous relationships, people are engaging in sexual acts without protection because they're monogamous. So that's just one of the things to think about. And according to Connolly, unfaithful individuals are usually less likely to practice safer sex than people in openly non-monogamous relationships. I know, it's kind of gross, but it's the truth. Now, in what ways is adultery criminal? We talked about that before, but we're going to briefly discuss the fact that It causes pain and suffering. Does this sound like an attorney ad? Personal injury. It causes PTSD. There's a lot of crimes of passion that are associated with infidelity. And then it's a breach of contract. All of these things that I just mentioned are, in any other context, unlawful incidences. And let's not forget, it is still unlawful in 17 of the 50 states. So it's an actual crime. I believe it should be punishable, but it's a crime in 17 of the 50 states. And why is it so prominent in our society right now? It's all on TV. They're singing about it. It's on social media. There's a propensity nowadays for casual sex, and there's no penalties. I mean, why would anyone do anything about something if nothing happens? Now, if someone had to pay some fines or spent a little time in jail, it would make them want to put them together or zip it up. You know what I'm saying? You're getting me. I know you're getting me. Now, there's a lot of immoral offenses that are also crimes. If thou shalt not kill and steal, then thou shalt not commit adultery. But we'll leave that alone. So what would be the point of criminalizing adultery? We want to restore family values. We want to prevent post-traumatic stress. We want to facilitate healthy relationships. And hey, let's make marriage great again, because the divorce rates are soaring, you know? We want to reduce those negative outcomes, the lowered self-esteem, the homicide, suicide, and the anxiety. And ultimately, it should be criminalized so that we can begin a trend that ultimately ends the adultery because of all of the negative effects that we have learned about. So by now you've heard all about adultery and how it's so much more than someone stepping out on their spouse. We've discussed that there are many criminal elements to adultery, such as the threat of physical harm, the psychological harm, the way that it breaks up a family, the traumatizing effects that it has on a person. The takeaway is that many contexts, or in many other contexts, traumatizing a person and putting them at risk is criminal and is punishable by laws. Now, 17 out of the 50 states have figured it right, or got it right and figured it out, and now so do you.